Dennis Kready, and for the past 23 years, my wife and I have lived at 550 West 2nd Avenue in the borough. My taxes are paid, my water bill is current, and to my knowledge, no outstanding warrants.
I'll run you.
Well, I was waiting for you to get your phone here. However, what I do have is a complaint with the borough over how it has handled the planning and development by Moravian Manor of the former Woodlands, which, as you probably realize from my address, is now replacing what was for many years the woodlands behind my house. What was a ready-made barrier of mature trees that could have easily been used in the landscaping design to provide a natural tree-friendly buffer instead was literally ripped out of the ground and ground to pieces. So I have a few questions for this council regarding the former woodlands. These are not rhetorical questions, but seriously questions for which I would really like answers. So question one, how is it possible that in Lititz, which advertises itself as being a tree city, how is it possible that the borough would approve plans for such a large development to go all through zoning, planning, numerous reviews, and in the end, basically allow the developer to rape the landscape of vegetation? And in my personal situation, leave me nothing but me and their maintenance building, and now a massive 3-story apartment building. Question two, what is the council's position? Mayor, what is your position on trees, native vegetation and grasses, and sustainable landscaping? Are they seen as an important part of Lititz development? Finally, it's worth clarifying that I was unable to have a discussion with the developer before all this destruction occurred, apparently because my property didn't touch the woodlands, or, I'm sorry, the former woodlands, as it's now called. Well, at least I call it that. I was not informed of the impending carnage. Once I did realize what was happening, I did approach Moravian Manor to express my disappointment with the outcome, and was informed by a man, I think named Gary, that he would put me in touch with the site supervisor to see if any remediation was possible. To my knowledge, no one contacted me. I'd like the record to show, I'm concluding now, that I do not approve of the destruction that has taken place. I believe there must be a flaw in the borough's ordinances and procedures to allow such wanton disregard for trees. And I would hope that in the future, borough personnel and you as a council give nature the priority that it deserves in our borough. And one final thought. I don't believe that this travesty involved any sort of malicious intent on the part of individuals or organizations. Rather, I wonder if people just weren't equipped with information and perspectives that would have helped yield a much more positive outcome. Thank you. And I do have my questions here. If you'd like to look at them, they are not rhetorical questions. If they can't be answered tonight, I would appreciate a response at some point.
Dennis, why don't you just go, I'd even go with you, to Moravian Manor and ask them to kindly plant trees in the area that you're talking about. It can't be that big of a deal.
So I did talk with Moravian Manor, and like I said, no response.
Ask them again.
I could go back and ask again, I guess.
Ask them again.
I'm not sure why I should have to be the one doing that, but I'm not sure. David, I understand. So I'm hearing you, and maybe that's what should be done, but I don't think that this can be covered up, what has happened. And I'm very disappointed in the process, is what I'm trying to say.
I understand it. But, I mean, for your immediate needs, to change the process takes a while. You have an immediate problem.
It's been there for a while.
But I keep on it. And we can investigate. I don't know what we'd have to change to alleviate your problem.
I can share a little bit. Dennis, I think that project, remind me, Elijah, went on for about, I want to say 6 or 7 or possibly even 8 years, the planning process with Moravian Manor, correct?
I've been here for 7 years and it was approved before I got here.
Yeah, and I think, there was, I will say, again, in my professional career, I work in a lot of municipalities and requirements that they have on shade trees and different things. I will say Lids probably has one of the better ones. trust me, I have a big concern, and every time, I sat on planning commission for 20 years, and anytime somebody was looking to come through and take out trees, you know, I was one of the first ones to raise concern. We implemented our form-based code, when was that, Elijah, probably like 10 years ago or so, that really enforced putting more trees, I would say, in like any kind of development that came into town. If you go through Moravian Manor or Woodlands, you'll see they have a required like shade tree every so many spaces.
I do see that they've put trees in for their residents, yes.
Yeah, well, if you go down through the streets, there are, and then like,
Yeah.
parking islands, and they're required to have a parking island, I don't remember, it's like every 8 spaces. I can go through the ordinance. I would love to sit down and share some of it with you, because there was a lot that went in through that, and I went through a lot of planning. Every ordinance, subdivision, and land development ordinance has requirements for buffers based on zoning district to zoning district. So again, that was like 10 years ago. I would love to sit down with you with Elijah. You know, he knows that ordinance.
I think the ordinance is at fault, because Elijah has told me that, because my property did not, there was a piece of property between me and their property, any sort of buffer was out the window. Am I correct, Elijah?
Yes, the family practice has basically an L shape that basically abuts yours.
Yes,
So you were not directly contiguous with Warwick Woodlands, so that wasn't
that's correct.
brought up. And after I discussed it with you, Warwick Woodlands owns the family practice building at this point. And I did bring it up to the CEO of Warwick Woodlands, and he was going to reach out to you, and I'm happy to follow up with him again on that.
Dennis,
Well, that clarifies some things, because I was wondering how they were putting a shed on someone else's property.
The shed should be on
Well,
Warwick
now
Woodlands property.
it would be on Warwick Woodlands property, but everything on that side of the street is the property of the medical practice, according to the deed that I'm looking at on the GIS system. Are you saying that now that strip that was the medical center is owned by the Woodlands?
That's my understanding. I don't know that they've consolidated the deeds, but they
Yeah.
purchased that property.
Okay, well, then they have more of an opportunity to resolve the issue, I think, because now they have more land to work with. They had very little land to work with before. I did find it a little bit ironic, not only in the name of the project, but also in the fact that the shed that was being put in place to store the wood from the trees that they had cut down. I just thought that was, I mean, Mayor, what's going on in this town? What's going on with the trees?
And Dennis, my understanding from speaking with the CEO is that shed is not going forward, in part because of the cost to put it in. But that was the brief discussion I had after you and I spoke.
on
Thank
the
you.
position, Dennis, on the position trees, again, personally, I'm always pushing for more trees. We have a shade tree commission, which not too many municipalities have, focuses on replacing trees. And again, I think anybody in the community would drive around the streets of Lids and know that we're more fortunate than most that we do have a lot of trees within the streets. I will say, and this is no offense to some of the local municipalities, you can usually tell when you've left Lids Borough. There's no longer street trees. There's no longer there's no longer landscape buffers. There's no longer requirements for trees in parking lot islands. So we do take it pretty seriously, and thus why we've gotten those certifications over the years, because we do have a lot more. Trust me, I agree on the thing of trying to retain the existing in every case you can. There's certain limitations we can put on a developer and say you have to do this and you can't do this. But if they're meeting the requirements of the ordinance, it's not that we can say, all right, you have to keep those, again, I have no idea, those 50 trees.
Yeah, I appreciate what you're saying, Stephen, and I would concur with you, except for my little territory back there. I'll let you point the trees out to me if you would, please.
I would, honestly, I would love to sit down with you with the plans and try to understand that specific. And if there is a gap in the ordinance, I'm the first one that will push
Okay.
to try to.
I'm very open to that. I'm very open to that. David, you had a good comment, so you're pointing it back at me and saying you got to persist and be a good neighbor, and I appreciate that. I will do
I'm
that.
happy to help you. I'm not putting it all back on you.
Okay.
I
Okay. I think I've had, Mr. President, I've had more time than I should have taken on this. But trees do seem to be a matter of interest. If I was able to contribute to that, I appreciate it. So I will follow up with David, who will put me in contact with the rest of you to see if we can get a resolution. Does that seem
Just
good?
in closing, I would love to sit down with you and Elijah and understand exactly, if there's a gap in the ordinance, I'm all about.
Okay.
I'm very passionate about a form-based code and allowing it to keep the lids looking the way it does. And I'm a big proponent that the landscaping and the trees is a big part of that. So I would like to see if there is a gap, and
Okay.
we'll work to remedy that with the planning commission.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Don.